Welcome. You have reached the EA View, and this is our panel today. We've got a friendly new face, and before we introduce our special guest, I want to remind you of the rest of our team here to contribute to the Archetype of Scorpio. We've got Rose Marcus from Vancouver, Canada. Hey, Rose.
Hi there.
And Deva Green from Ashland, Oregon.
There.
Stacie Pazura from Utah.
Hello.
Hello, team. Hello, gals. And we have a very special guest today, Chahal from England. And she is hello.
Hi.
Rob is a new grad in evolutionary astrology. We're so excited to have her here today. She's just been doing exceptional work. We're so happy for EA and we're happy for her. And we're going to hear from her a little later. We'll probably hear from her a little bit during the show here today. But you know, it's really deep work. As we all know, it's Scorpio work, it's Plutonian work. And so it's a lot to get through this course. And so I just want to congratulate you. It is all encompassing, and it's really about surrendering into something so much more than you ever thought was possible. That's the gift of this work, to lead us all forward and to help others do the same. So a big congrats from all of us.
Thank you.
And, you know, before we started today and we were talking about the archetype of Scorpio, and I was asking Rob some questions about her journey, she was sharing with me that Pluto, which rules Scorpio, just left the 4th house for her. And she also said that it had been 13 years almost ago when she discovered EA, right? Or maybe a little less than that. And Pluto had just moved into the 4th house. Yes. So for any of you who either have Pluto in the 4th house natally or have memories of it moving through your 4th house, you know how deep and difficult and emotionally challenging it can be. It is literally, it's the first water sign in the zodiac, Cancer, 4th house. We evolved through this emotional body of ours. And Jeffrey Wolf Green, the founder of EA, used to say, it's like the river finding its way back to the sea. When we get into that river, when we get into that watery element, you don't get in with your clothes on, you get in naked and vulnerable, and you have to surrender to that current in order to make your way back to the sea. And when Pluto's in the 4th house, you have no choice but to surrender to whatever is happening. Was that your experience too, Rob?
100%. That just feels like literally it was so deep that at some points I was like, I'm drowning, if I'm completely honest, in terms of the work.
Yes.
Just learning astrology from the beginning, to be honest, just like from scratch, and not ever done astrology before, but just knowing I had to do this.
You know, that's amazing, because when people used to attend the schools in evolutionary astrology, the live schools, Jeffrey used to tell people that if you've learned astrology in other ways, you'll have to unlearn it in order to do this work. Like, he really thought that the people that had no background in astrology, that experienced this work, you know, had a better chance at, you know, without mixing all these other thoughts and ideas or ways in and ways out of the chart that other people kept bumping into. And so I was very similar to you in that regard. I mean, very little experience in astrology. And so I think, you know, just to go all full in, you know, with this work, it's not scratching the surface, you know, it's really going all the way into the center of what these charts can unveil. So that was a good thing. That was actually a really good thing. So what was the day that Pluto left the 4th house for you? Do you remember?
For myself, I think it was probably just before I graduated, I think, if I really think back. I think it was towards the end of September.
That's amazing timing. Okay, so Rob graduated from the School of Evolutionary Astrology on September 14th, 2021. She is a Virgo. And Pluto left her 4th house about the end of the month. She's a twin and Pluto hasn't left her 4th house yet, but will soon. And they will be celebrating. I encourage all champagne nice.
I just have to say, I mean, I'm a natal fourth house Pluto. So
Oh,
I get it. I get it.
and so here we are with Pluto in the fifth house, in your fifth house, and you are on the EA stage sharing your story. And I know this isn't easy for you. I think you have Saturn square in the nodes, don't you?
Oh, sorry, it's Neptune squaring the nodes,
Oh,
but in the
Neptune
third
squared
house.
in it. Okay.
Yeah.
Either way, there's a shyness. I mean, the Virgos are not one to just step out there and say, hey, yeah, look at me.
Yeah.
But I understand the hesitation. It's a lot to put yourself out there. But if it means helping shine a light for somebody else, then it just is an honor. So
Yes.
welcome to this stage here. And I'm
Welcome.
getting ready to hear more from you. So any of you guys, any comments about this Scorpio archetype? There's so much in Scorpio right now, which we'll talk about in a bit with the transits chart, but anything that you want to say in terms of, like,
Well,
give me a bottom line definition of.
You know, just what you were just talking about a moment ago there, you know, one of the 4 ways that that evolution occurs is by, you know, making a connection to something, and that making a connection to something is very compelling. And it certainly is when you discover evolutionary astrology. I think that the comment that I've heard from students over the years is that it just spoke to my soul, right? You know, people who come into this study gravitate towards it. And, you know, it is that whole metamorphic process of, you know, of the study and the moving through it that that helps for one to understand the bottom lines of one's own desires and needs, the soul itself. Coming through this study is so profound in terms of the personal journey, you know. So, you know, many people come into it for exactly that, to understand themselves. The byproduct of that is being able to share this phenomenal body of work with other seekers.
Well, if I can just be, I originally didn't plan on studying the subject. I just wanted to have a reading, and I did with Deva right at the beginning. I believe it was September 2011, actually. It was post that reading, my thought just went, I need to study this. I need to put this out there, because I was already doing life coaching just prior to that. So
it was just amazing what you shared. You were just like, this is Christmas for me in so many ways I can't tell you. And I just remember thinking, this is exactly Scorpio. This is the Scorpio calling the soul back to itself, saying, hey, dive into this and throw yourself into this, merge with this in every way that you can. And you were just 100% on board.
Well, I just remembered something. My mother's due date was November the 7th. My twin and I came 7 weeks early.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's strange that I've had a lot of Scorpion links within my life, though I haven't got a deep Scorpio signature in my chart. Yeah.
Well, and we know what your power animal is. You told us before the show.
It is. It's that Phoenix bird rising, which is Scorpio through and through.
Oh, right. Well, you really are a Scorpio then, if you were due on that.
I'm a hidden Scorpio.
All right. Well, you know, to me, it just blows me away about even the transits, when you can have a reading with Deva right before Pluto entered your 4th house. And you really need to do that emotional work before you felt ready. And you were doing the work of this, of EA during that time as well, homeworks, and, you know, really educating yourself deeply, and educating yourself through your emotional experiences too. And really, gosh, that is an incredible example of how to evolve through that transit. So well done. And we are all in a state of becoming, are we not? So what a wonderful way to celebrate the end of that transit, to graduate and to be here today with all of us. It's very exciting. All right, any thoughts, any Scorpio words from the Scorpio girl who will have a birthday on November 21st? Stacie Pazura, happy birthday, our Scorpio for the panel.
Yeah, another trip around the sun. Yeah, in terms of what has just been talked about, when you find EA and it's just the soul, you experience it calling itself home, and there's just something that just goes so deeply. And one of the unique things that I've really found about EA is that you have to be willing to do the work, and unless you're like, especially as an astrologer, if you're not really putting yourself into the lessons and consciously observing it and working on it, then you're just not going to grasp it. You're just not going to grasp it. That's what I've found. So it definitely speaks to a deep consciousness.
Well, readiness. I think you have to be
And
ready.
readiness. Yeah, for sure.
And one of my favorite examples of Scorpio, or the ruling planet being Pluto here, is that people that have a preponderance of this energy in their chart or are experiencing transits of Pluto contacting planets, you're always wanting to ask the question, why? And I think, when you're feeling like a victim of circumstance, or you're feeling like things are really hitting hard, it's important to stop and ask yourself, why am I calling this in? Why has this happened? And whether it's even a client that you're working with and they're really going through it, one question that always tends to stop people in their tracks is, well, why do you think your soul called this in? What is it that you feel like you need to learn from this? Whether it's a betrayal, which is so classic Scorpio, somebody just, abandons someone else and leaves them brokenhearted, or just any number of things along those lines. It's like, well, what is it that you're supposed to learn here? And so many of the lessons connected with Scorpio and Pluto are trust issues, misapplied trust, or learning who to trust, starting with trusting yourself. And trusting yourself does require you to turn in and really connect with what it is that your soul wants for you. And that comes through your instinct. We've got Mars now in the sign of Scorpio, which governs the instinct. And I think if we just move to that chart next, we can talk about the transits right now that can, before we do that, I guess.
One thing.
Oh, sure.
So you mentioned that, one of the important parts of Pluto is asking the question why, and why am I calling this in? But with Pluto dynamics, those things are not always you're not always going to get the answer, even if you meditate, because sometimes you just need to go through it without knowing what it is or what it's about, but you keep asking the question, and then, the awareness deepens.
Yeah.
And I just also wanted to say that, Scorpio is very laser-like. It's perception. If you ever see somebody with a lot of Scorpio, walk into a room and in seconds flat, have checked out everything and focused in on exactly, and that's the nature of Scorpio in general. And at the soul level, the soul is going to focus in laser-like on whatever it has already chosen for its evolution. So, if it's abandonment or trust issues, or, any of those kinds of difficult things, that's exactly where the soul is going to go. It has purpose behind that. And the purpose behind that is to drill right through it, to come out the other side, right? Metamorphosis is the Scorpio archetype. So to change form and to go directly into that which the soul needs to confront in order to completely transform and metamorphosize whatever that particular, feature is within the soul. So to some extent, I think, Scorpio is, it's going to strip away all the superfluous, it's going to go right for the jugular, right for the gusto. And sometimes when life is very difficult and many times I have clients come to me and say, like, God, like, this is too intense. It's too intense. But you have to remember that your soul chose to do it. So the more that you, as Jeffrey always used to say, is to comply with your evolution, not to resist it, the faster you can go through it and get over to the other side. And in terms of faster, I have to say that it's up to the soul, the pacing, right? Our ego says, this is too long. It's taking too long to get through this. For the soul, it's a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
Hence this slide here, Rose. Am I being too intense?
Am I being too intense? I love this.
I think that for Scorpios, if they're not feeling something intense in their life, it's something usually the ones at least that I've talked to along these lines, they feel like something's off or something's wrong. Like, it's such a go big or go home kind of life. And I also think about the Pluto and Scorpio generation. It's like they've either come here to metamorphosize the planet or blow it up. It's like nothing in between.
Yeah. I always say about that generation living on the razor's edge, and we have the 15-year-old nuclear physicists, and we have the Olympic athletes, and we have the drug addicts, and we have everything in between, right? But I will say that if you are going to be in relationship with a Scorpio archetype here, you have to be ready to do the work, because there's no let up with it, right?
Definitely not. All right. Well, let's look at our chart for today. The transits chart.
Yes, so here we have the month of November, and we have, of course, we've just moved into Mars transit through Scorpio, which moved into Scorpio at the end of October and continues until December 13. And we presently have Mercury also in Scorpio, and of course, the sun's in Scorpio. So the signature transits of the month, we have so many of them. We've had a very dynamic new moon just a couple of days ago. Now we are moving our way towards the lunar partial eclipse on November 19. And that eclipse, as you can see on the screen, will be 27 degrees. The lunar eclipse is across the polarity of Taurus and Scorpio. 27 degrees Taurus, that lunar eclipse, and the sun at 27 degrees of Scorpio. If you have any planets in your natal chart that are at these degrees and pulling in Mercury at 21 degrees Scorpio and that Mars at 13, you will feel this. An eclipse is an acceleration archetype. A lunar eclipse is a more punched up new full moon. And so the intensity dial of this is quite strong. Now, this is November 19, and an eclipse can be event generating when it occurs, but it has a duration of time. So this is a transit that can generate prior to and after the exact influence. And we watch the transit of Taurus. Just on the 17th of November, Mars will oppose Saturn, which is sitting at 12 degrees retrograde of Taurus there. And on the 18th, there is a lovely trine between Venus and Capricorn sitting up there in the 10th house of this chart, trining that Uranus before we get to the lunar eclipse on the 19th. So we've got some triggering influence that takes place the 17th, 18th, and 19th. And this is really, a Taurus full moon. Taurus is, of course, what has value and meaning, right? And this has an opportunity. Again, the Scorpio piece is about looking at it deeper, uncovering whatever it is that might be inhibiting, your your ability to create, a stable point for yourself. This has a suggestion of making some kind of breakthrough in terms of how you are evaluating, and how you are navigating all points of relationship, whether that is your relationship. I always say relationship is relationship to self, relationship to other, relationship to whatever it is that you're manifesting. Taurus is the archetype of self-worth and net worth. And it's also the archetype of the psychology of inner hearing. So all of that is a suggestion of, with Mars opposing Uranus, some kind of aha moment or some kind of sudden, trigger, some kind of sudden awareness that could change your perspective and move you into, kind of a new direction in terms of what, how you are relating to everything, including your survival issues.
Yeah, I mean, I really like a lot of what's happening on this day and this particular symbolic moment. Really, it feels to me like an inner door opening. And what I like to do when I'm looking at transits, especially big ones, when we're dealing with a pair of eclipses that will affect your life for the next 6 months or reflect the energies happening in the next 6 months, is that we always start with Pluto. So with Pluto and Capricorn, it's trining this moon, this full moon, it's trining, right? So the moon is in Taurus and that ruler is Venus in Capricorn, which is trining Uranus. So now we've got two of these planetary pairs that are showing up in a trine. We also have Mars, which is the lead point in your evolution, in Scorpio, which is ruled by that Pluto, and Mars is sextiling Venus. So everywhere you look, really, there's something connecting. It's like there's something opening another door. It reminds me of Get Smart. Anyone's old enough to remember that show. But the doors, they just keep opening and opening and opening. Just follow the doors that keep opening is really what the message is. Instead of trying to open a door that will never open for you. There will be doors opening, but those doors start within, especially during a full moon and especially during an eclipse. The other planetary pair in here is yet one more, really big one, is that Neptune in Pisces will be trining Mercury, the ruler of the North Node. That is a lot. Those are a lot of supportive aspects. Not to mention the sun is also sextiling that Pluto. So, you really do have to overlap this chart with your natal chart. And if you're feeling the intensity of the times, this recent new moon was not very relaxing. It was opposing Uranus. So it can create a lot of angst. And it is, I think, intentionally making people feel uncomfortable so they can take some transformational steps in their life and experience the kind of breakthrough that they need in order to evolve. But I'm encouraged. I'm not saying that life is perfect and everyone's life's going to be perfect on the day of this eclipse, but I know for those of you that are really wanting to evolve and wanting to grow and wanting to find that door open, whether it's a crack or it's wide open, it will be if you look. And so this is a strong day for seekers and for people that have the courage to go a little further than they've gone before.
There's tremendous opportunity to realize and to manifest in some kind of concrete way, some kind of actual way, right? Yeah. So fantastic. It's fantastic.
All right. So the 2 weeks that follow this eclipse will be very sensitive energetically. And next month, we can talk a little bit more about the total solar eclipse that follows. But any of you guys, Deva or Stacie or even Rob, that want to comment on this eclipse?
Well, I'd like to say one other thing, if I may. I was looking ahead, and a lunar eclipse is a little bit short in duration. I always say it's like plucking the string of a musical instrument, so it reverberates over time, and it's going to be generating ahead of time and after. And want to watch the movement of this entire chart. But I was looking ahead, and there will be a total lunar eclipse on February 16 of 2022. And it's going to pick up the flavor of this eclipse again. It is the eclipse will be in square across Aquarius Leo at 26, 27 degrees. And so this eclipse, whatever, manifests at this point in time, may be a developmental circumstance for you that can take you through until the beginning of next year.
Okay. Rob,
Yeah.
you were going to say something?
Yes, I've just noticed that the 12 degrees of Taurus, Uranus retrograde hits my Chiron retrograde in Taurus in the 8th house, the whole Scorpio double signature coming through. So I just went, okay, that's going to be an interesting day for myself.
Well, I think it's more about, the Uranus transit is your work in astrology, right? And you've shared that it's hard to kind of come out of the shell and to put yourself out there in this way. It's going to create some anxiety. Of course, it's going to trigger some old wounds. Undoubtedly, we've all been persecuted for being different, or for, that's just the nature of what the type of soul that this work draws into it. And all souls that have really tried to walk a natural path and had some sort of consequence for it. I watched Avatar last night, so I was reminded about that. Want to go back to the forest, please.
Well, Chiron is a maverick archetype, and it talks about your special destiny. So there's a really lovely kind of catapulting for this eclipse for you.
It's for myself, it feels more exciting than fearful.
Good.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Yeah, but we're all here to support you along the way. You're not alone.
From what you've shared too, exactly, it can be that an older resource that you've had in the past that may have been linked with trauma or is linked with those survival issues through this type of transit or through this type of eclipse, it can spring open a different inner relationship to that. Looking at these doors that are opening, it's almost like saying, if I put more energy in my commitment to this, or if I put more energy in expanding or growing or moving my energy more towards the deepening of this, then those doors I can really break through, or I can really open through those doors. So looking at the Uranus energy also trining that Venus in Cap, and the moon trining Pluto in the earth signs, the Taurus in the 2nd and Capricorn in the 10th, it's like restructuring or reframing that inner relationship to a potential valuable resource. That the Scorpio energy may be that friction that both Kristin and Rose were sharing. It's like creating that necessary angst, almost in a way of pulling out or saying, hey, we're going to extract this through these transits. And so looking at this just in a general way to encapsulate that the more energy you put in that deepening, or the more perhaps that you change your inner relationship to it in a positive way, igniting that excitement and saying, this is something I can trust and develop accelerated pace, potentially seeing the Aquarian energy. So lots of motivational energy from my point of view.
Yeah, and that polarity as well too. I've heard it from a lot of clients as well too. How do I go from survive to thrive, right? And that's the whole intention of this.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, let's go.
Yeah, Mars and Scorpio, just go, right? Mars is our choice-making planet, and it dictates the rate and speed of how fast and far we all evolve, right? It's just linked with the risks we take and how much we allow ourselves to follow what we feel is right, and just to lean into that turn and go for it. So it's a powerful place for Mars right now for everybody. All right. Stacie, anything?
Oh,
Scorpio lady?
we can move on.
We can move on. Okay. All right. So Deva.
Yeah, my movie pick for the month is Bridges of Spies with Tom Hanks. And I really felt this was a good one for Scorpio for a few reasons here. Is that it's just so, especially coming from the previous month of Libra to Scorpio, he just refuses to put on any sort of appearance about things, no matter how much he's pressured from his law firm to go about the motions of defending a Russian spy. It's to keep everybody comfortable, right? And he makes it a choice. He says, no, essentially we have other people in the US operating just as this guy did. They're also spies, and I'm going to go ahead and make a full commitment into truly defending him. And he's a good lawyer, so they get really scared when they hear this. Like, oh my gosh. But he doesn't, he really commits to truly defending him, and that trying to, in my view, Pisces or Neptune is that he really communicates his strength, or I see the power of it really coming through, transmuting or communicating a message of universality or humanitarianism. He's saying, look, we all, bottom line, Scorpio, we all deserve the same humanitarian treatment. He was doing, again, what people in our country do. And I'm going to invest my total energy in seeing this through, making a commitment, following it through. And then in that process, he defends him and so on. And then he gets given an opportunity to mediate, coming from Libra, a trade. They caught a US spy. And so he's saying, well, here, look, here's our leverage. Here's our power. We can get one back. We can trade. We can get this guy back if we give, we can get our guy back if we give this guy back. And then along that, another person a US person gets caught, a student, and they're all pressuring him just to go for the spy. He quoted has more worth, more value, more power. And again, here comes the Scorpio. No, I am not going home until these two people are coming with us. He refuses to abandon another one that they say is more powerful than this other guy. And the way that he does it is super cool, at least from my point of view. He's in there negotiating, and he says, well, listen, so far your guy, he has behaved really well because he thinks your country wants him back. But if he doesn't think your country wants him back, I can't tell you how his behavior might change or what lies and secrets he might say, what secrets he might give up. And they go, uh-oh, I think you're going to get both the guys back pronto. And there he does it. He does he makes the big deal, and he's able to get both home. And the essence for me is the value of seeing that commitment through and through, and knowing how to use power in a way that creates the best or the maximum opportunity, not power over, power under, for lack of better terms, but really uniting each force here, or uniting with people in a way where the best outcome, or getting both people home, so to speak. So coming from Libra, not giving in to pressure even when it's super intense, and using leverage when you have it.
It is an incredible movie. I highly recommend this a few times. And Tom Hanks is just brilliant. The Last Mile, I think. Oh, The Green Mile, is that the other movie he was in? That was
yes. Oh my gosh. Another
good Scorpio movie.
Yeah.
Wow, that one was incredible, but excellent recommendation, Deva. All right. All right, so we ready to move on to our fingerprint?
Nelson Mandela. This is just such an amazing individual, and just a brilliant chart as well too. So perhaps some background here. He was a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary, political leader, and philanthropist who served as the first president of South Africa from 94 to 99. He was the country's first Black head of state, and the first elected in a fully democratic election. So his government focused on dismantling apartheid by tackling institutionalized racism and fostering racial reconciliation. And of course, he's ended up with, he's done so much more than that. He was a controversial figure for most of his life. He was born in a small village as a member of a royal family. And he was born on what they call the right hand, so it meant he wasn't going to assume the leadership of that royal family, but he went to study law so that he could become a privy counselor to the ruler. It's interesting. I can't pronounce his given name, but the meaning of his name was troublemaker. And, I won't even bother to try to pronounce it. But then when he went to school, and he was the first of his family to actually go to school and be educated, his teacher gave him the name of Nelson. And the name, which I had to look up, means champion in Gaelic. So that's very interesting. Of course, later on in life, they called him Mandela, which is a term of endearment for the elderly father. And he also, by the way, another name that he got was father of the nation, right? So there's a lot there. I was trying to find. He's got so many awards. It was something like 250 awards, including the Nobel Peace Prize, right? So he went to study law, as I said, to help the ruler of his tribe, right? He later stated, as he moved through his life, he later stated that he experienced no great epiphany, but he simply found himself doing so and could not do otherwise in terms of the path that he followed in life. Amazingly, that he was, he initially went into politics, initially committed to nonviolent protest, but later on in life was considered to be a terrorist and went to prison for 27 years, an entire Saturn cycle. He was actually sentenced to life imprisonment, but was released due to the, kind of the hotbed of the political scene there and the apartheid movement at that point. So quite interesting that he's gone from one extreme to another extreme in his life, from royalty to poverty, from prisoner to president. I wrote this myself, from national treasure to collective treasure, a spokesman for the people and for peoples everywhere. So from imprisonment, he in the 60s, the start of his imprisonment, he was the lowest class prisoner, and he slept on a mat and got letters from the outside like once a year. He went from the lowest class prisoner to the highest. And of course, throughout the entire time in prison, continuing to study and get his degrees and to show quite a lot of grace in the face of adversity. I think I could go on and on about his biography, and perhaps a lot of people know about Mandela, but maybe Deva, you were going to start this?
Yeah, from what you were saying, also what struck me is that he, seeing the natal energy in his chart, seeing the Pluto in Cancer in the 7th, also with Jupiter balsamic, is that he broke away from family tradition or what was expected of him in terms of his father's role, and seeing North Node being in Sag in the 1st house, and also seeing the polarity point in Capricorn in the 1st, he was able to break out into being a lawyer, and from my understanding created the first of color law firm that was addressing just what you were bringing up. And in terms of the natal signature, in terms of his personal growth, seeing how he was able to break new ground, seeing how he was able to access that courage to break free from the past and that pioneer energy through through being also able to depart from what others or what was the thought patterns or the accepted norms within that family, or with the Gemini in the 7th South Node, input other people's voices. By taking those steps, he was able to put into motion a system or a foundation that felt most intuitively right in terms of his personal truth, and how that was centered upon not waiting or not listening to one side or one person over the other, but saying, look, essentially it's taking the anger and the hatred that's in both of this that's really creating the dilemma here. And in order to break new ground, we're going to have to unify, or we're going to have to see on both ends how that is contributing to the conflict, so to speak, seeing that 7th house, one extreme creating the next. And as you were saying, how he switched that 7th house, he really at first started with the nonviolent aspect and peaceful protest, and from my vantage point shifted into more fight for it or like protect yourself. Like if there are people who are, threatening you or so on, it's almost like you went to the opposite. And from my understanding too, seeing that he's in the first stage spiritual in terms of uh, being able to align with natural laws or natural principles, seeing the North Node in Sag in the first, and Pluto balsamic that was clearing up, or that was in a balsamic phase to truth that he was either hearing, seeing the 7th house, or of course, having been exposed to just through interacting with people in diversity of realities. And this is what this is these people's mindset, this is these people's mindset, their voices, and so on. And he was really able, especially on the other side of coming out of prison, and that experience, being able to hold the view of unity and holding to that no matter what, seeing that as being a central principle of his life, seeing Jupiter balsamic, that he wasn't gonna live anything that was authentic to his own nature or inauthentic to his own truth. And it became a very emphasized point that was going to be his integration point, or that was going to be his way of breaking free from the past. And seeing the Mercury in Leo with Saturn conjunction in the 9th house, and that's the ruler of the South Node, a sense of special purpose or of leading, being able to take charge of his own destiny through the power of what he was conveying, or the power of these natural principles that again were in alignment with unity and diversity rather than unity and the sameness. So seeing how there perhaps learned truth, or seeing the South Node in the 7th having all the input and not having quite brought to closure, being able to vocalize, articulate, or really act on that truth. And that was something that, from my vantage point, and then I'll pass it along, really struck me about his life, was his courage to put into motion, or to put his will behind what he was being drawn to do in terms of the good of the country, the good of the whole, first stage spiritual, helping others around him as well as himself heal from this tremendous conflict that South Africa was going through.
Right.
Awesome. Stacie?
Yeah, let's see, am I still okay? Yeah, so I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about Venus conjunct the South Node in the 7th house in Gemini. This is a new phase conjunction, and kind of what I see in these symbols and correlating it to his life is he's drawing from previous lifetimes, because Venus is the value system. Venus is your deepest intrinsic value. values. And when you're conjunct the south node, it's like you've got a fusion there. It kind of reminds me of like Venus having a taproot. It's just plugging right into that south node, which is where there is emotional memories, because the nodes, you know, the moon, that's all emotional based. And so it can generate a lot of emotional memories. And being in that seventh house, you know, there's an indication that he's sort of tapping into a diversity of lifetimes where he's been in all sides of the relationship, all different classes, you know, comparing to other people comparing to him, just a lot of relationship interaction and seeing how that plays out in the world. And, you know, it's interesting because, you know, you could say as a past life signature, because the south node is going to bring in past life patterns, that perhaps, let me just find the words the way I want to say this. Oh, well, you know, with seventh house, it's one of the things that you can kind of fall into is over absorbing other people, over absorbing their realities, and sort of losing sight of your own center. And so, you know, I believe that this has been a dynamic in the past. It usually is for Libra. You've got to go through it at some point. But he's channeling this diversity of lifetimes and relationship orientations. And coming into this life, you know, we've got this this new phase dynamic going on where, okay, you've had all these lifetimes, this diversity, you've learned these things, you know, and these are all correlating to his soul's real deepest values, right? And these things are going to be maybe reflected in the current life. And, you know, having been on so many sides of it, I mean, when you look at his life, he just has an innate intelligence about what life is like for people, all kinds of people. And this is one of the reasons why he could go into a courtroom and cross-examine a white woman who's just totally offended that a Black man is asking her pointed questions, you know, and he just gained a lot of support because his focus was so much there. And so I, let me think if there was any, oh, there was one thing I wanted to say. Where did I write? Oh. And so, you know, while he has been involved in different organizations, because it's been a process of resistance, right? There was a point where because when he got into the paramilitary radicalization type thing, he did it consciously. And he did that after the massacre. I can't believe I'm spacing the name of the massacre, but it was a peaceful protest where you know, like over 100 Black people gathered to affirm, what was it? I can't remember the official name of it, but they were protesting the requirement for Black people to have to carry passes all the time. And so they wanted to liberate themselves from that. It was a peaceful protest, and the police just opened fire, and I believe 69 people were killed. And it was at that point where he realized, okay, it's no longer reasonable to just preach and talk about peace. You know, we have to arm ourselves. And so that's one of the reasons why he got into that. But as you can see, as his life goes on, he definitely, there's a progressive shift more into listening and more into understanding people, and less about the shocking confrontation, right? It's more about just speaking bottom lines and osmosing other people's realities, because this is a gift that he has. And you know, that Venus south node, there's an inconjunct there to the moon in Scorpio on the 12th. So it's very easy for him to osmose another individual's emotional reality. And in that way, he can kind of get a grasp of where they're coming from, what's important to them, how to talk to them. And he found that creating a dialogue and giving people, you know, having people sit down rather than just arm wrestle, you know, for the adrenaline of it, he realized that is how you create democracy. And so I've kind of gone a little long there, so I'll just leave it there.
Thank you, Stacie. I just want to say something. When you have Saturn, sorry, I meant to say Venus on the south node, and you know, Venus is always an archetype of give, right? You know, and it's seventh house, and Deva alluded to this too, and you were talking about it. But I was just in researching him. You know, when he retired the first time, about 5 years worth. He didn't go for being reelected for president for a second term, although he could. He retired, and despite being retired, he was inundated with invitations to speak. You know, and that's again that Venus South Node in Gemini in the seventh. And so, and he fulfilled all that, and about 4 or 5 years go by, and he decides to retire from his retirement. And he quipped, "Don't call me, I'll call you." I thought that was hilarious, you know. I mean, he really had a sense of humor, right? Yeah, you know. And I was going to speak about Mercury and the Mercury-Saturn conjunction, which Deva, brushed on when she was talking as well, too. And Mercury is the ruler of the South Node, and that South Node's in Gemini, and it's in the seventh house, and both Gemini and Libra are an archetype of diverse, right? You know, so all the diverse experiences that he had, and, you know, in that extremity of going from peaceful to doing whatever it takes, you know, if it means arms and, you know, the violence piece, and then back to the peace and back and forth. So that's an interesting thing there. Certainly, Leo in the ninth house is a signature for royalty, and he has a royal lineage. And that Mercury and Saturn and the ninth house also relative to seventh house things talks about law as well, too. So education and law. Being first of his family to actually be educated. That's at Mercury Saturn again. I mean, there's just so many repeats of how that plays up. But Mercury and Saturn, you know, they're 1 degree off. That's a new program starting with Saturn, and being that Mercury and Saturn in the ninth house is spokesperson, right? And the power of the word. And just to note as well, too, that Mercury and Saturn trine the North Node, and he's got that ascendant in Sagittarius. The ninth house is a Sagittarius house. And the ninth house also corresponds to the world, right? You know, and so forth. He was quite enamored, by the way, of African history and so forth, and that goes with that Mercury Saturn as well too. I just wanted to read some quotes here that just so demonstrate that Mercury Saturn. Let me just say the first one is, "Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world." You know, again, a ninth house archetype here. This is what you were talking about, Stacie, in terms of the art of listening, that, Venus South Node in Gemini relative to Mercury and Saturn here. "It is never my custom to use words lightly. If 27 years in prison have done anything to us, it was to use the silence of solitude to make us understand how precious words are and how real speech is in its impact on the way people live and die." You know, very amazing. Another thing he said, when the history of our times is written, will we be remembered as a generation that turned our backs in on a moment of global crises, or will it be recorded that we did the right thing? You know, and that I think was it was to do with a lot of different things. Here's another fantastic quote here. I never lose. I either win or I learn.
love that.
All right. And I have two more quotes. He said at school he developed a love of African history, and he had a stubborn sense of fairness, which I think is lovely, right? I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against Black domination. You remember that Saturn and Capricorn rule the skin, color of the skin. I have cherished the ideal, that's again, ninth house and so forth as well too, Neptune as well too in there. I've cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal for which I hope to live for and to see realized. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. He said those words in a 3-hour speech, which is quite famous. And lastly, this quote as well too. When a man has done what he considers to be his duty, Saturn, right, to his people and his country, he can rest in peace. I believe I have made that effort, and that is therefore why I will sleep for the eternity. That's amazing, to think about at the end of life, to feel that you are on purpose, right? And I think his whole life, that Mercury Saturn in new phase is not, as he said, I had no great epiphany. He was destined to fulfill exactly what that purpose was, and he was Saturn again at the right time in his own evolution. It's time, the archetype of time was set up for him to live exactly. And the other thing I'll say is that perseverance and longevity. I mean, to spend 27 years imprisoned and to have gone through all that he experienced, indomitable spirit, to keep going, right? And when you are on purpose, and when you are, taking direction directly from your soul and from source, you never run out of energy, right? Kristin.
Oh, wow. He did live a long life too. It's 95,
Wow.
right? When he passed. Yeah, I mean, he is a beautiful soul, a very attractive being. There's clearly flashlights coming out of those eyes. So I think he was quite the ladies' man. I've got Lilith in Leo here in the 9th house. He did attract the ladies, and he loved the ladies. And he got in trouble for that with his first wife, who ultimately became a Jehovah's Witness. He was a nurse and a midwife. They were married 14 years. So at that Saturn opposition, they did get divorced. They had 4 children together. He was married 3 times. The second wife, Winnie Mandela, also known as the mother of the nation. If you look at that ruler of Lilith and Leo being the sun in Cancer in the 8th house, and that moon in Scorpio, I mean, he was attracted to powerful women. He was very an activist and very involved in the anti-apartheid. And she rose to prominence during the anti-apartheid movement when he was in jail, and she became the public face for him during his 27 years in jail. And so think about that. They were married 38 years, and 27 of those years she was in jail. That takes quite a woman to take, his role in the world in that way. I mean, he was really attracted to her power and her position, and what she was willing to do for others. I mean, I think that was a driving force in him, being really attracted to women that were caretakers of others, and a mother of many. And so his first wife was clearly that. She was the nurse, and she was a midwife, and she had their 4 children. But as all of us evolve in our life, and as we evolve as beings, we end up at times evolving through our relationships. And that's really what I saw him doing in that lifetime of his. So it was not long after he got out of prison, I don't think only a few years before they were divorced, Winnie Mandela and Nelson Mandela were divorced, I think 3 or 4 years after that. And he married again for 15 years. So 14 years, 38 years, and 15 years. But, you know, within that first marriage, and I don't know about the others, obviously was in prison. He wasn't with other women, but, you know, he just was very magnetic in his nature. And of course, you know, I think it's probably pretty hard when women are just hanging all over you and you're attracting them like a moth to a flame. But his third wife, her name is Graca. She was the first woman to serve as the first lady for two countries. She was married to the head of Mozambique, and he had passed away, and then a president of Mozambique, and then she married Nelson Mandela. And so she was also a politician and a humanitarian. So that was his draw, obviously, to the natural woman and those roles that they played in his life, and who could be a partner for him and you know, till death do us part in some cases. But that third wife of his for 15 years till he was 95. So they married when he was 80. And I didn't check, but I don't know how old she was at that time, or is. I'm sure she's still alive, or perhaps she's still alive. So anyway, yeah, you can see that he is very attracted to that passionate soul, that Leo energy in a Sagittarius house, and being willing to die for the truth, I would say, with the ruler being the sun in the 8th house in Cancer.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
So we
All
shall
right.
move on. Yes.
Yes, let's move on. Thank you for your service, Nelson.
Yes.
Oh, your massive service. Okay, Stacie, we've got an interview with our new grad, Rob Chahal.
Yeah, I just want to bring on Rob Chahal. Are you there, Rob?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. So, as we know, you are a fresh grad, and you've been studying for a little bit. And I'm just curious, like, how did you find EA in the first place?
I came across EA because I remember that year, the start of 2011, I believe it was, a lot of things around me just kind of collapsed. And it was actually during my Saturn return, which now makes a lot of sense. But at the time, it didn't make any sense at all.
Right.
And I actually was looking into past life astrology. And I was in the astrology shop in London. And I came across the book. I came across Jeffrey's book. And all it said was Pluto, the journey of the soul. And it was the soul part that just jumped out. So I literally bought it and I devoured the book. Then I found out there was a second book, devoured that. Then I had a reading with Deva herself. And then it was post that I was like, I need to study this material. I need to know this. And originally it was more for myself, personal development and understanding myself and my own journey. And then I had already started a life coaching practice the year before, a very small business, but I always felt something was missing. And the minute EA walked into my life, it was like, there it is. There's the missing jigsaw piece.
Mm-hmm.
And literally that was the beginning.
Yeah. And so what is it about EA that like really captured you versus other forms of astrology? Or
It was answering the question why. It was that whole understanding of why anything happens, why you attract certain relationships, why, you know, just that whole why are we here? Because I remember I just wanted to understand what is the purpose of life. And I'd read a lot of books, and I've done a lot of I'm into metaphysics and psychology, and I've covered a lot of material. I'm a bookworm, but it was just that one book that literally just answered the whole question. And then the volume 2 just went deeper into the relationship side of things. And I just it literally blew my mind, and it still blows my mind. I've read Jeffrey's book about 10 or 12 times. It's something I will reread. I learn something new every time I read it. And yeah, I'm quite proud of myself, the fact that I managed to qualify, to be honest. My Virgo side was kicking in and going, need to be perfect. And every time I submitted each piece of coursework, it was nerve-wracking, literally nerve-wracking.
Oh, that's funny. It's funny because your story is so similar to mine. I also have like a north node in the 6th house. So it was the same way. I began looking for kind of personal answers, and really nothing was registering, nothing was firing off until I came across Jeffrey Wolf Green, because he really got to the bottom line of things, and he didn't sugarcoat things. He said things the way that no one else says them, and
Well, yeah.
it's refreshing, isn't it? Especially with Scorpio dynamics, right?
Well, I've only found out Jeffrey's birth data later on, and his Venus is, I believe, it's quite close to my Uranus in the 2nd house, because his is 16 degrees, and I was like, this material was always going to come to my life. Like, there's just a feeling of destiny behind finding the material and understanding it at that particular time rather than before.
Yeah.
And even later on, to be honest.
Did you say that it was Uranus in the 2nd?
I have Uranus in the 2nd house in Scorpio, yeah.
And then what was contacting that?
Oh, Jeffrey's Venus.
Oh, Jeffrey's Venus. Okay.
Jeffrey's
You know
Venus.
what that reminds me of, honestly, is the inner teacher. Because, that is one thing that Jeffrey, if you are tuned in, if you are looking for sincere and true and deep answers, I don't know what it is, but he's there. If you really absorb him, you will have answers come to you, even if you are not speaking to him directly. And so that's just such a strong symbol for that inner teacher relationship for you. Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
I was
go
just going to tell you just an interesting fact, because I remember receiving the DVDs, and I put them on, and I just wanted to listen to them. I was like, I could listen to Jeffrey all day.
Right.
And I remember years ago listening to Osho on YouTube. I couldn't listen to the man for a minute. I read his books, but his voice, I was like, I need to switch him off. And I didn't know at that time about his past and his history and stuff. And I've learned through EA about his soul journey. But it was I found it very interesting in terms of what I was absorbing within to me. And
and really just detecting those vibrations, those inner vibrations, and noting the differences between the two, and knowing where you wanted to gravitate. So that's awesome. Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. That's so EA. That's just how so many people find it. So how would you describe yourself as an astrologer? How do you approach a reading? So if someone is having a reading with you, what kind of astrologer, what kind of experience are they going to have?
Self-empowerment. I that's the key word I use, because the reason I want to do this work out, like to do it as a career, is self-development. That's my personal growth. And it's to understand, it's that saying of know thyself. We're going deeper into that. And people don't have to be into past lives, though I love the past life aspect of EA. It literally is something I'm very interested in. But they could just be looking at the here, the now, the present. So being able to decipher the chart and to answer their questions, to be honest, and to give them the feeling of validation. I had a client last week, actually, and the person was never into astrology. It was actually the first guy I've ever read for. I've always had women come to me, and this was the first guy. And I was like, this is interesting. Post my qualification, a guy turns up for a reading. And post the reading, his answers were, you've just validated a lot of the experience that I've had. And it wasn't about predictions, and it wasn't about, just tell me my life's going to work out. It was him knowing that his direction, what he's feeling is valid, and he's not making it up in his mind. So it's actually helping a person grow.
And I remember, because I learned from Wolf, as I think Kristin, Deva, obviously she's his daughter, but we've all learned from Wolf directly. And one of the things that he would always say about the important role of an evolutionary astrologer is to validate another's reality. And so for you to have that focus to do that is you are on the right track, I just have to say. And so what can we, do you have any kind of future vision for yourself, or are you just taking it one step at a time? Or
well, clearly the next full moon partial lunar eclipse won't help me do that. It'll probably kick me into a different direction. But at the moment, I really enjoy the one-to-ones with individuals. But the ideas I have is towards workshops, like personal development workshops, and I blog and I write, and there's a book in me, probably more than one book. That's the angle I want to take it towards. But it's also, being of an Indian background, it's actually the focus, I've only thought of it today, is breaking away the patriarchal rigidness that's within the culture that I've been brought up in, and what surrounds family and things. It's quite rigid, to the point, once I learned more about the patriarchy, etc., I got so disappointed and upset. And I'm thinking, we live in the 21st century, but we haven't actually moved on from thousands of years prior.
right.
It actually breaks my heart, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to open doors for others that are still looking to break the mold. Does that make sense? It's probably my second house Uranus. There it is.
Yeah. That's perfect. Well,
What would
does
the book be? Is that what the book would the book be about? That?
Actually, I wrote down the title will be something to do along the lines of blood is not thicker than water.
Wow, I love that.
Something along those lines, because that notion is, it's just something to do with the ancestry and the family dynamics, to control where you give your power away, actually. Yeah.
Great.
Well, that's great. I mean, you just give off an energy. You're so full of purpose, and it's just so refreshing to see. And I want to congratulate you for for choosing this, because not everyone chooses this. It takes a special soul, someone who's really committed to the work and the bottom lines, and making because evolution isn't easy.
No.
It's not easy. And so, you have to really have a special talent in order to really motivate people to make choices to help them evolve out of their own limiting patterns. And you're just so full of the intention. And so, so if anyone wants to find you, where can they do that?
Well, I have a website. It's actually called Free Spirit Life Coaching. .com. I've kept the name from when I set it up in 2010. I just like the whole free spirit part of it. And we are on a life journey, and astrology can be a part of that life journey. So I've kept that name. And I have an Instagram page as well. You can find me via my name as well. And I've got a Twitter page, because I love tweeting. That's my Mercury, Virgo. I love Twitter.
I'm going to have to look at that.
Yeah, I absolutely love Twitter. But I'm actually honored to be a part of, even on here. I've watched Zoom meetings for years. Literally my go-to, even for my independent study for the coursework and stuff. So to be here is actually, it's literally like, is this actually happening? Am I going to wake up from a dream?
Well, I have a feeling this is not the last time. So
It will not be the last
we're going to
time.
be seeing more of you. So does anyone else want to throw out some questions or comments for Rob? Okay. I mean, we got through a lot in the beginning.
In the beginning, yeah.
One question for you, Rob, because of what you persevered through and the quality of your assignments. I want to ask you, what advice would you give to people who are sitting there with their pen and really struggling to hit that submit button? How do I get through my work? What would you say to motivate somebody who's struggling with that aspect to continue the work, or to push them to turn in their assignments when they're not feeling so confident?
To be honest, it's actually trust yourself. Like, even when you're analyzing the dynamics, because you can see so much. So taking the questions bite size. So doing it the methodology of Pluto, then the South Node, doing it like that. But the first thing I tend to say to people is just sit there and just see what the chart says to you. Just imagine the stories if you have to. Just, you know, in my head, I have a lot of things going on. I can imagine certain storylines and stuff. In terms of submitting that piece, you'll just know. Like, I'm telling you from somebody who's can be a perfectionist, everything has to be correct, you know, have I done this right? You will just know, because I remember the pieces, I'm typing the pieces up, the assignments, and it was just that moment. I'd reviewed it maybe 3 or 4 times just to reread it, and before submit, it's done. Then I press submit. So trusting your intuition when it is ready to be sent. Yeah.
Well, you're a natural, so welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to close with some inspiration. And I was thinking about back in the day when I was so fortunate to be a part of the live school, and Stacie was there too. And I remember on a couple of occasions, I think maybe we were learning about Pluto in the 9th house. Nelson Mandela has a stellium in the 9th, and he does have a Scorpio moon, which is the ruler of his Pluto. And Jeffrey would say, how many of you, with a show of hands, would be willing to die for what you believe in? You know, and in a group like that, an EA group like that, I mean, almost everybody raised their hand, you know. Well, some people were a little bit like this. And we all think we would do that, but would we do what Nelson Mandela did? I don't know. That's really pushing some limits. That moon in Scorpio in the 12th. Wow. That's a big life, and it's so inspiring. And there's a very famous passage of his that I want to share here that many of us and many of you, I'm sure, have heard, but it doesn't matter how many times I read this, I always feel empowered and inspired when I do. And he says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. It's not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And lastly, from another quote of his, I want you all to remember that you really are the master of your fate and the captain of your soul. Namaste. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about evolutionary astrology, the website, schoolofelevolutionaryastrology.com, there's a message board there, and you can also access the original teachings that Rob just graduated from that course on the website. And so we welcome you there to participate and to ask questions as well if you're interested. And we will be back next month to discuss the archetype of Sagittarius. It will be the first Saturday of the month. December 4th. Oh my goodness, are we going to do that on the eclipse?
Your birthday?
On my
Kristin?
birthday. Wow, well, I'm up for it. I'm game. We'll be back. That's all I do know to talk about Sagittarius. Okay. Take care. Thanks you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.